Welcome, welcome. And I'll go ahead and share the screen and then we'll make our bracha. Right. Hopefully you'll be able to see it in a second. Very good. I believe you can see my screen now. Okay. Let's go back a little bit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So, as you know, we are talking about Betzalel and Oholiav fabricating, along with the skilled craftsmen of Israel and the women as well, skilled women in fabricating the different elements and parts of the tabernacle. And we are going to, as you're going to see, the next little piece we're going to talk about is the Mizbach HaKtoret, the incense altar. Now, what's interesting is that in Parshat Truma, where we start, this is a couple of parshas, three parshas back, where we start discussing the construction of the tabernacle and the whole notion of this tabernacle. As the Torah goes through the various articles of furniture of the Mishkan, it does not mention the incense altar. Very interesting. And we don't mention that incense altar until later on. And in actually, I believe it's at the end of Tetzaveh. I could be wrong, but it's definitely out of order. And I obviously that sort of jumps out there. It's one of the pieces of furniture that were inside the tabernacle. And why is it left out at that particular point? And I think that part of the reason is that the incense altar was a very powerful device for atonement. However, as we know, it could also bring about death, as we witness from Aaron's two sons. And the fact is that since we get very close to reading about the golden calf in the next parsha of Ki Tisa, that I think that there is a connection that because the whole issue is that Ki Tisa and the incident of the golden calf comes right in the very middle of the discussion of the tabernacle. And so that we come to realize that the tabernacle is a great instrument of atonement, given human weakness and human capacity to sin. And by sin, I mean to contravene the divine will. That's the very essence of sinning, is doing something that goes against the divine will, and that there is a way of reconciliation, and that the incense, bringing the incense, the sweet savor, the sweet smells, etc. We know, for example, the tremendous effect emotionally that aromas have on us, that smells have on us, and that they affect us very deeply. And so again, the idea of the powerful nature of this, and I think that's part of what's going on here. And of course, this particular altar was in the tent of meeting itself. It was in the sanctuary. After all, it could have been outside, but it wasn't. It was inside, along with the other items of furniture, and very close. It was actually in the very middle, placed pretty much in the middle of those items that were there. And again, that's all symbolic, all has its meaning. So with that in mind, we're going to get into this. Vayas et mizbach haktoret, and he made the altar for incense, atzei shitim, of acacia wood. Ama or ko, it was a 1 cubit of length. Vama rochbo, and it was a cubit of width. Ravua, square. V'amatayim komato, and 2 cubits in height. Mimenu hayu karnotav, and its horns were of it. And I want to show you a picture of the incense altar here. That's what it looked like. Quite beautiful, actually. And so, of course, this is where the incense would go. these are the horns of the incense altar. Although it looks here as if they're separate pieces, but that's because this is a scale model of it. But we have to just understand that that this was the way it was, that it was made that way. Here's a full-size picture of it. I think the fluting is actually very interesting, and I don't know, I didn't come across where possibly they got the idea of the fluting and whether it was actually mentioned explicitly. But here you can see the incense altar. Also think that it's quite significant of how the handles, right, the poles with which to carry it are on opposite, are diagonally facing, and there's just one ring for this. So I'll go back into the text now. Okay. Vayitzaf oto zahav tahor, and he overlaid it with pure gold, et gago, its roof, ve'et kirotav, and its walls, saviv, all around, ve'et karnotav, and its horns, vayas lo zer zahav saviv, and he made for it a crown of gold around it. And we can take a look at that just quickly. And this, of course, is the crown, the zer, the wreath, right, around it. The translation of crown is actually a significant translation because, as I said, they talk about the three crowns, and these items that had crowns symbolize the different crowns. This would represent the crown of the priesthood. The crown the crown that was on the shulchan, on the table, just to refresh your memories, that we read about yesterday, was the crown of royalty. So this crown is the crown of priesthood and what a priest does. And incidentally, of course, the word kohen in Hebrew, which we translate as priest, actually means a minister, the idea of ministering to God. Ushte tabot zahav, and two rings of gold, asalo, he made for it. So just two rings, not four, not two on each side, just two rings. That's how we get this particular configuration. Mitachat lazero, below its crown. Al shtei tzalotav, on its two sides. Al shnei tzidav, again, on its, yes, on its two. I think here we would have to say, even though the word sad often means side, but salot means side, and we translate it as sides here, but we'd have to say on its two corners, I think is how we would want to translate this. Levadim, so as to accommodate the poles, the staves, laseit oto bahem, to carry it with them, with the staves. Vayas et habadim atzei shitim, and he made the staves out of acacia wood. Vayitzaf otam zahav, and he overlaid them with gold. Vayas et shemen hamishcha, and he made the anointing oil, kodesh, sanctified. Ve'et ktoret hasamim tahor, and the incense, the incense itself, pure, right? Ma'aseh rokeach, the work of a skilled blender of spices. Okay, so that's the incense altar. And when we say Kodesh, I believe the reason is that we are given elsewhere where they actually talk about the compounds and the recipes for these various anointing oil and the spices, the incense. No one else is supposed to use it. It is unique. It is only for this particular purpose. So designated. This all has to do with this concept of Kodesh, right? So I like to translate it as significant, but then the word significant begs interpretation as well. So, any comments before we move on? Okay, all right. Vayas et mizbach ha'olah, and he made the altar for the whole offering. So the burnt offering, atzei shittim, was made out of acacia wood. Chamesh omot or ko was 5 cubits in length, v'chamesh amot rochbo, and also 5 cubits in width. Ravua again, square. V'shalosh amot komato, and 3 cubits in height. So let's take a look at this. Let's see, I think it's, let's take a look and see if this is it. Yep, good. This is what it looked like. So this is the 3 cubits. Okay, so 5 by 5 by 3. Here are the horns of it. And this is where the sacrifices were burnt. And so this was the base of the altar, okay? And it was actually, of course, quite tall, as a matter of fact. And this was a ledge on which the priest actually walked. So 3 cubits would be about 48 inches. And so this height would be about 48 inches. So counter height. And just another picture for you to see. This is the picture of the ramp. Let me see if I can do this. Sorry. I don't know if you can see the whole thing, but this is a ramp that they made that allowed the priests to walk up to the altar. Now, it looks to me as if this actually got them onto the altar itself. I'm not sure about, oh yeah, I think there was actually a side ledge that allowed them then to walk around here as well, because they put the blood on the corners of it as well. So let's go back into the text. Okay. Vayas, and he made karnotav, its horns, al arba pinotav, on its 4 corners. Mimenu hayu, it was made of it, in other words, as part of a solid piece of gold here. Hayu karnotav, its horns, vaitzaf oto nechoshet, and it was plated with brass or copper or bronze, however we want to talk, however we want to translate nechoshet. Vayas it called clay hamizbeach, and he also made all the vessels for the altar so as to be able to get it to function. It hasirot, the pails. This is basically Safaria's translations, which are based on other translations as well. Ve'et hayaim, the scrapers. Ve'et hamizrakot, and the basins. Et hamizlagot. By the way, this is the word mazleg in modern Hebrew means a fork. So flesh hooks to carry the meat. Ve'et hamachtot, and the fire pans. Kol kelav asa nechoshet. All of its utensils he made out of brass. Vayas lamizbeach michbar, and he made for the altar a grating. Maaseh reshet, made of meshwork, nechoshet of brass. Tachat karkubo, around underneath its rim, milamata ad chetzio, from below until its half midway point. Again, let's take a look at this. Let's see if this is it. Okay, let's see. Yep, here we are. So this is what we're talking about right here. This is this karkov, the ledge, and this is this meshwork that we're talking about. You can imagine trying to do this without the illustrations. It's very, very difficult to, at least for me, it's very difficult to visualize just on the basis of descriptions. Vayitzok arba tabot. Now see, it says, and he cast four rings. It says four rings, two. Ba'arba hakatzavot, on the four edges, lemichbar, uh, for the meshwork, right? Nechoshet, hanechoshet, the bronze meshwork, batim lavadim, to set in the poles. Vayas et habadim atzei shitim, and he made these staves of acacia wood. Vayitzaf otam lachofshet, and he made them. He overlaid them with brass. Again, however we want to translate nachoshet. Vayave et habadim batabot, and he put the staves into the rings, al tzilav, on its sides, al tzilot hamizbeach, on the sides of the altar, laseit oto bahem, in order to carry it through the staves. Navuv luchot asa oto. So now we have a word. It means, as Rashi's going to explain it to us, it means hollow, right? In other words, the luach is like a tablet, a board. He made it. So in other words, I believe that what this is trying to tell us is that the altar wasn't solid, it was actually hollow. So let's take a look at the Rashi here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Navuv luchot. Navuv hu chalul. So it says the word navuv refers to something that is hollow. And he gives an example from Jeremiah. He says that I think this is of your, right? Its thickness was arba was 4, etzbaot, fingers, navuv, hollow. So whatever Jeremiah is referring to here, it's the fact that something that was 4 fingers of thickness, nevertheless, was something hollow. It was hollow. Nevuv luchot, right? So he says the boards, right? Haluchot shel atzei shitim, okay, that is to say the boards of the acacia wood, lechol ruach. So there were boards of acacia wood in every direction on the 4 cardinal points, v'halal ba'emsa, and the hollowness was in the middle. This is okay. Let's go on now. I didn't get the picture of it, but we'll see where it goes. All right. Vayas et hakior, nechoshet, and he made the laver out of bronze. This was the laver that sat between the entrance of the tent of meeting and the Mishkan and the altar, the external altar, the Mizbach HaOlah, and ve'et kanon nechoshet, and its base out of brass, of nechoshet. B'marot hatzovot. So it's very interesting. He says with the mirrors of the serving women, asher tzavu, this in that they served petach ohel moed, at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And let me see what I can do here with this long Rashi here. So if we have to stop in the middle, we will. So, b'marot hatzovot, right? With the mirrors of the women who served. Benot Yisrael, he says, the daughters of Israel, hayu b'yadon marot, they possessed mirrors, sheroot bahem, that they would look into these mirrors, keshehem mitkashtot, when they would adorn themselves. V'af otan lo ikvu milahavi, and even these mirrors, which had a very important function, right? I mean, this was very much a part of a woman's toilette, and they did not hesitate. Milahavi lindavat hamishkan. They did not hesitate to bring these mirrors as a gift to the Mishkan. V'haya mo'es Moshe bahen. And Moses looked down on these things, looked down on these mirrors. He saw them, as symbolic of personal adornment and basically vanity. Mipnei she'asuyim liyetzer hara. And the reason he felt that way is that they were made for the sake of the evil inclination. Meaning, in other words, they would beautify themselves in order to work up their men to lust, right? To make themselves very seductive for the men. Amar lahen, and he's, Amar lo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, said to Moses, Kabel, accept these mirrors, ki elu chavivim alai, because these are more precious to me, min hakol, from everything else. In other words, all the gifts that they brought, these mirrors are more precious in God's sight than anything else. Sha'al yedehem, because through these mirrors, he'emidu hanashim tzvaot rabot, because through these mirrors, the women were able to establish many hosts, meaning many children, the Mitzrayim in Egypt. This is, in some senses, a famous Rashi, and of course where it appears in the Talmud. Keshayu balehem yigaim, when their husbands were weary, ba'avodat parech, in this hard labor that they were engaged in. Hayu hochot, these women would go. Umolichot lahem machal, they would bring with them food, right? They'd put together a picnic basket, umishteh, and drink, umachilot otam, and they would feed their husbands, venotlot hamarot, and they would take these mirrors, v'chol achat ro'eh atzma, and each one of these women would show, they do a selfie, right? They would show themselves im ba'ala, with her husband. They'd hold up the mirror and show a reflection of themselves and their husbands, b'mar'eh, in the mirror, umishidalto bidvarim, and they would work up their husbands through words. They would speak words and get their husbands stimulated. Lomar, saying, the women would say, Ani na'amimcha. They would tease their husbands, and they'd say, look how pretty I am compared to you. Umitochkach, and in this manner, meviot levalehem lidei ta'ava, and in this way, they would bring their husbands to have a desire for them, a deep desire, an appetite, right? A ta'ava. It means like an urge, an appetite, or to do something, a lust. There we go. They bring their husbands to a point of lust, v'niskakot lahem, and they would engage with them. They would cohabit with them, umit abrot, and they would become pregnant, v'yoldot sham, and there they were able to, of course, give birth. They would bring babies into the world. Shine'emar, as it says, Shir HaShirim Chet, in the Song of Songs, chapter 8, Tachat HaTapuach, underneath the apple tree, Orarticha, I awoke you. Vezehu, that's the implication of this verse in Shir HaShirim. Vezehu she'nemar, and this is a reference to B'marot HaTzovot, and that's when it talks about the mirrors of the hosts, right? That's what it's referring to. And they would make the laver out of these mirrors. Shehu l'shum shalom, because the purpose of it is to bring peace bein ish leishto, between a husband and a wife. Lahashkot mimayim, and what's this referring to? Because they would take the water from the laver, mimayim shebetocho, from the water that was in the laver, lemi shekinei la ba'ala, for the purpose, remember, for a woman who is suspected by her husband of adultery, and of course you can imagine the emotions that are involved there, and they had this process to allay that, or to certify that this had happened. V'nistera, so in other words, her husband was suspicious of her, and she had gone into seclusion with another man, essentially. v'tedalacha, and know for yourself, shehein marot mamash, you should know that they were actual mirrors. I believe is what he's saying, that this laver was made out of these actual mirrors. Shin hare ne'emar, because later on it says, u'nechoshet hatnufa, it says the nechoshet of the wave offering, shiv'im kikar, was 70 talents, the gomer, etc. And it goes on to say vaYaspa, and he says, and he made with that bronze, etc. V'chior v'kano, and in that particular case, when he mentions the things that were made out of that particular donation of bronze, v'chior v'kano luhus karusham, it doesn't mention the laver and its base. Lamadata, and from this you can infer, shelo haya nechoshet shel kior, that you should know that the bronze that was made, from which the laver was made, it wasn't minachoshet hatnufa, it wasn't from this brass or bronze of this particular offering. Kach darash Rabbi Tanchuma, this is how Rabbi Tanchuma interpreted. So there is a midrash on the Torah called the Tanchuma. It is actually extant, and I have to think that this is what Rashi is referring to here. V'chein tirgem onkelos, and likewise you see that onkelos translates the marot b'machazit neshaya, meaning in the mirrors of the women. V'hu targum shel marot, okay, and that is the translation of the word marot. And this, I'm going to guess, is miroir, right? Belaz in French, and here we have it in Yiddish, Spiegel. Spiegel, of course, is the Yiddish word and German word for mirror. So, right, there's a German newspaper called Der Spiegel, and it means the mirror, like the Daily Mirror in England. So I'm going to mark it here. And I'm so glad we were able to come across and actually read this wonderful piece of Rashi here. So that's where we are going to leave it for today. So, okay. I'm going to stop the share. And I don't know if any of you have any comments you want to make before I stop the recording.
Yeah, the mirrors were made out of metal, copper, shiny copper. They weren't made out of glass.
No, I don't know when, they had to discover how to silver the glass to make a mirror. And I believe, I'm not a mirror maker, but I believe that involves mercury. I believe that silvering a mirror has some way in which to get the mercury to attach itself to the glass. I think that is how they do it, but I could be wrong. Could be chrome. All I know, it could be chrome. I don't know. I think.
And the laver, the wash basin was just mentioned now. It wasn't mentioned before.
No, it is mentioned.
Like the incense, it wasn't mentioned before.
Okay. No, it is mentioned before. No, they are mentioned before. I believe that wash basin is also mentioned along with the incense altar in that particular place. But it has been mentioned. We just haven't read it ourselves because it was later on in the Parsha, and it wasn't in a place where, we had reached yet. But we will, God willing, eventually reach there. I'm going to stop the recording here.